Welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So let's continue on with Catelyn 1, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 2,065 words long and is told from the perspective of Catelyn, the wife of Lord Eddard Stark and daughter of Holster Tully. In this chapter, Catelyn seeks out her husband in the Godswood to inform him of the news that his foster father, Lord Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King, is dead, and that King Robert Baratheon, his family, and half his court are on their way to Winterfell. This chapter is mostly plot-heavy and explains the Godswood, the differences between the faith of the Seven in the south and the old gods of the north, Ned's Valyrian steel sword Ice, how uncomfortable the Winterfell Godswood makes Catelyn feel, and the Weirwoods, which we'll talk about later in the video. We also learn that Catelyn's sister is married to Ned's foster father, Catelyn's uncle, Brynden Tully, resides at the Eyrie, and that Queen Cersei's pride grows with every year. So really, not a lot happens in this chapter, except for the letter. But George is planting the seeds for the mystery surrounding Jon Arryn's poisoning, the Stark-Lannister rivalry, Mance Rayder, and the different religions of Westeros. In this chapter, Catelyn seeks out her husband Eddard in the Godswood, following his return to Winterfell after the events of Bran 1. She knows her husband always goes there after executing a man. Catelyn finds the Godswood very dark and unsettling, compared to the sunny Godswood she remembers from Riverrun, her childhood home and the seat of House Tully. Unlike her own family, the Starks keep faith with the old gods, rather than the faith of the Seven adopted by the rest of Westeros. She finds Ned polishing his ancestral greatsword, Ice, under the heart tree at the center of the grove. He asks after the children, and Catelyn tells him they are deciding on the names for their new wolves. Ned notes that the man he executed is the 4th deserter this year. He adds that the man was half mad, that something had put a fear into him so deep that he could not reach him. The Night's Watch is dwindling, down to less than 1,000 men. Not just from deserters, but from ranging casualties. One day, Ned may have to call his banners to fight Mance Rayder himself. Catelyn warns him that there are darker things beyond the wall. Ned replies that the others have been dead for 8,000 years, and that Maester Luwin claims they never existed at all. Catelyn replies that nobody had seen direwolves until today. When Ned asks why Catelyn has come, she tells him that Jon Arryn, his foster father, and her brother-in-law is dead. The news came in King Robert's own hand. When asked, Catelyn explains that Jon Arryn's widow, Catelyn's sister, Lysa, and her son have returned to the Eyrie and says that she thinks her sister should not be alone, and should have gone back to Riverrun. Ned urges Catelyn to take the children to keep her sister company, but then Catelyn informs him that Robert Baratheon has also written to say he is coming to Winterfell. This news cheers up Ned. It has been 9 years since he last saw his old friend. However, Catelyn is worried about the omen of a direwolf found dead in the snow with an antler buried in its throat. Robert is coming here? When she nodded, a smile broke across his face. Catelyn wished she could share his joy, but she had heard the talk in the yards. A direwolf dead in the snow, a broken antler in its throat, dread coiled within her like a snake. But she forced herself to smile at this man she loved, this man who put no faith in signs. Here, we see that the death of the direwolf mum stokes fear in Catelyn, and this, along with potential glass candle dreams, motivates Catelyn to take a series of actions that both benefit the side of fire, with the return of Jaime Lannister to King's Landing, and the side of ice, with Catelyn leaving Winterfell, seizing Tyrion, and igniting the War of the Five Kings. Thus, Bran can go north. With Robert coming, Catelyn confirms with Ned that they should send word to his brother Benjen on the wall. Then Catelyn informs Ned that Robert's wife Cersei Lannister, their children, and her Lannister brothers are also coming. Ned does not like the Lannisters because they came to Robert's cause only after victory was certain. Eddard is looking forward to seeing Robert and Cersei's children, and then announces his worry about feeding them all, cursing his old friend. And this is where Catelyn 1, A Game of Thrones, ends. There is not much to discuss in way of conspiracies with this chapter. However, this chapter does seem to connect with the events in Bran 3, A Dance with Dragons. "It is time," Lord Brynden said. Something in his voice sent icy fingers running up Bran's neck. Time for what? For the next step, for you to go beyond skin changing and learn what it means to be a green seer. Inside was a white paste, thick and heavy, with dark red veins running through it. You must eat this, said Leaf. She handed Bran a wooden spoon. The boy looked at the bowl uncertainly. What is it? A paste of weirwood seeds. Something about the look of it made Bran feel ill. The red veins were only weirwood sap, he supposed, but in the torchlight they looked remarkably like blood. He dipped the spoon into the paste, then hesitated. This paste might be Jojen. Will this make me a green seer? Your blood makes you a green seer, said Lord Brynden. This will help awaken your gifts and wed you to the trees. Bran did not want to be married to a tree. But who else would wed a broken boy like him? 1,000 eyes, 100 skins, wisdom deep as the roots of ancient trees. A green seer. He ate. It had a bitter taste, though not so bitter as acorn paste. The first spoonful was the hardest to get down. He almost retched it right back up. The second tasted better. The third was almost sweet. The rest he spooned up eagerly. Why had he thought that it was bitter? It tasted of honey, of new fallen snow, of pepper and cinnamon, and the last kiss his mother ever gave him. The empty bowl slipped from his fingers and clattered on the cavern floor. I don't feel any different. What happens next? Leaf touched his hand. The trees will teach you. The trees remember. He raised a hand, and the other singers began to move about the cavern, extinguishing the torches one by one. The darkness thickened and crept toward them. Close your eyes, said the three-eyed crow. Slip your skin, as you do when you join with summer, but this time, go into the roots instead. Follow them up through the earth, to the trees upon the hill, and tell me what you see. Bran closed his eyes and slipped free of his skin, into the roots. He thought, into the weirwood. For an instant, he could hear the river rushing by below. Then, all at once, he was back home again. Lord Eddard Stark sat upon a rock beside the deep black pool in the Godswood. The pale roots of the heart tree twisted around him. The greatsword Ice lay across Lord Eddard's lap, and he was cleaning the blade with an oilcloth. Winterfell, Bran whispered. His father looked up. Who's there? He asked, turning. And Bran, frightened, pulled away. His father and the black pool and the Godswood faded and were gone, and he was back in the cavern, the pale, thick roots of his weirwood throne, cradling his limbs as a mother does a child. A torch flared to life before him. Tell us what you saw. So, it seems as though Bran visited Ned just before the events of Catelyn 1. This, along with the Hodor reveal from Season 6, Episode 5, seem to confirm that Bran can use the weirwood net to influence the past. In a later video, we'll talk about the ways Bran might be responsible for the building of the wall and for Mad King Aerys' insanity, in a desperate hope to stop the White Walker invasion before finally walking inside the body of a human and travelling north of the wall to witness the origins of the others for himself, only to be captured by the Children of the Forest and turned into the Night King, since Bran might be the most powerful green seer ever to live, and the White Walker's power of animating the dead is not that dissimilar to Bran's or Varamir Sixskin's ability to warg multiple animals and people at once. Maybe after thousands of years, Bran has learned to warg entire armies of corpses and ironically become the very thing he set out to destroy. However, this is pure speculation and plenty of people don't agree with it. Anyway, we should find out more in The Winds of Winter. And that's about it for Catelyn 1, A Game of Thrones. In the next video, we'll cover Daenerys 1 and continue from there. In the meantime, here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. The scene in King's Landing introducing Queen Cersei and her brother Jaime is not in the books. It also shows the corpse of Jon Arryn. In the book, the conversation between Jaime and Cersei about Jon Arryn's death and their secrets occur when Bran discovers them having sex at Winterfell in Bran 2, A Game of Thrones. There is no mention in the novels that Jaime ever jumped off the cliffs of Castle Rock. In the books, the conversation between Ned and Catelyn about Mance Rayder is omitted, and so is the situation at the Wall, where Ned remarks that he might need to call his banners and march north of the Wall to defeat Mance Rayder in battle. Moreover, the news that Lysa has gone to the Eyrie is introduced later in the show. Everything else that is omitted from the book includes Catelyn remarking that Lysa should have gone to Riverrun instead of the Eyrie to be with family. Ned informing us that Brendan Tully is at the Eyrie and will be able to give Lysa comfort. Ned's suggestion Catelyn should take the children and visit Lysa. Lastly, in the book, Ned is way happier to hear that Robert is travelling to Winterfell, while in the show, he looks miserable. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. This video is not sponsored by Fantasy Flight Games' new online board game, the A Game of Thrones Digital Edition. But check it out, it's a lot of fun, and in a year's time after we finish the first book, we'll organise a live 6-player online game with you, the fans.